Robert Plank Show, Episode 8, How to Get into the Entrepreneur Mindset and Become Productive Anytime You Want. This is your good buddy DJ Dave, and you're listening to The Robert Plank Show. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. Today we're hearing from the legendary Robert Plank from TimeManagementOnCrack.com. And if you're feeling completely overloaded, unorganized, and feel like you're always running out of time, then you need to get a grip on and control of your time management skills. You need to get into the right mindset. If you want to multiply your productivity level by 50 times or more, compress months into minutes, finish everything you start, and enjoy building a profitable business in your spare time, then close down all distractions and turn up the volume because you're in for a wild ride.
Awesome. Thanks for that great introduction, Mr. DJ Dave. I'm excited to talk to you today. I'm excited for you because we're going to get into what's called the entrepreneur mindset and become productive anytime you want. And I don't know about you, but when I always hear about these things like, self-help or personal development or life hacking, I keep thinking, why does that concern me? I'm just a coach. I'm just a computer programmer. I'm just a person that sets up websites. But then I realize that there are many times, probably throughout every single day, when I need that kind of stuff, when I sit down on the computer, when I can't get motivated, I can't just get myself to do it, to finish it, to have fun doing it. I goof around on Facebook, on Twitter, open up my email, check my phone, and it's time to just get off the computer and just hit that reset button. And so I'm going to be sharing with you quite a few techniques that I use when I want to get excited about what I'm doing and finish what I'm doing and just keep doing it over and over, because there's this thing, basically, let's just call it inner game and there's outer game, right? And let's just call inner game all the things about yourself that where you're pretty much you're being self-aware, you're being accountable to someone else who's looking over your shoulder, you're running a countdown timer, you're staying on track, you're focused, you're energized, and you know when what you're doing isn't working, and when it comes time to shift your attitude, shift your mindset, and focus on something else, do something different. So that's your inner game, and then we have your outer game, which are the things that actually is your output, right? Like your marketing, your advertising, your copywriting, your traffic, your products, your emails, those kinds of things. And you really can't have one without the other. And I would also go as far as to say, if you let me say something a little outrageous, is that I would say that your inner game is about 80% of what matters, and your outer game is about 20% of what matters. Because if you've heard over and over about, let's just say, people who win the lottery, right? The average person who wins the lottery loses all that money over the course of the next few years. Or they end up dead, or in a lot of debt, or overweight, broke, with no friends, or all of the above. And then you hear about people who are really famous or really successful. You hear about people like, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Michael Jordan, even controversial ones like Donald Trump. They didn't get to where they are by accident, by luck. It didn't happen in a straight line. In fact, many of them it kind of went up, and then it went down, and then back up again. And, you can look up all kinds of self-help books and find out all these stories about, the guy who invented KFC heard the word no 1,007 times. And when Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, he tried 10,000 ways. It didn't work before he found the one that did work. And so you hear a lot about that, and I think that's where a lot of the self-help stuff gets a bad name. Well, first of all, because none of it's real, right? It's all based on what we do, and we come up with these terms and these analogies and these ways of visualizing the things that help us and things that hurt us, and then you have people who kind of, I want to say, overstudy, right? They were in a bad place at one point. They couldn't get things done. They procrastinated. They were unhappy, and they clung on to some saying that really worked for them. And they might have read like a really good book that still is relevant. It's called Think and Grow Rich. And they might have heard, like, I don't even know how it goes, but it's like, if you can dream it, you can achieve it. And so they say this every dang day, all the time, and it worked at first. But over time, it gradually stopped working, and they ended up focusing on just the words, and they didn't actually put it into action. And I come across people all the time where they're really well read, They know all the tips, all the tricks, all the facts, all the quotes and sayings. If I give them a piece of advice, they'll say, "Oh yeah, well, what you just said, that reminds me of, this one thing that Napoleon Hill said, or this one thing that Zig Ziglar said, or this one thing that Jim Rohn or Tony Robbins said." And I'm thinking, well, that's great, you know the words, but have you actually put it into action? And so that's one thing that I really want to be mindful of today is I could have easily talked to you about 100 different tips for productivity and time management and rattle them off to you one after another, and you could have taken lots of notes and said, okay, that sounds good, I agree with that, but I would rather focus on the simple things that actually work, that have worked for me for years, that haven't stopped working, that you can just start using over and over again, because there's two pieces to this. There's your mindset and there's your productivity. So your mindset is your attitude, the way that you look at life, and your attitude and the attitude of others is really contagious. And that means that if you hang around a bunch of grumpy people all day long, then you too are going to become a grumpy person. And this became super clear to me when Lance and I, a couple of years ago, we put out a product called Backup Creator. It's a WordPress backup plugin. Whether you have it or you don't, that's fine. But at the time we're recording this, it is now in use on just under 50,000 sites. Well, you sell that many copies of a plugin, you're going to get a lot of customer support, which of course equals so many people yelling at you every single day, and you kind of have a few ways to deal with that, right? And the obvious way is to kind of build a thick skin, because it's very tempting. Probably your first instinct is to just get annoyed at every single complaint, or someone who just comes in yelling at you, or someone who, on the rare occasion that we have a refund, take it so personally. Or maybe they yell at you and you yell back, or you get annoyed, or you just start complaining and bitching about them all day long. And it's kind of sad when a little 5-minute or even like a 1-minute encounter ends up ruining your whole entire day, but that happens to us so many times. And so the reason for that, well, there's a couple of reasons, but the way that I see it is that everything we do is driven by the need to gain pleasure and avoid pain. So we get to this point where we have different ways of dealing with obstacles, roadblocks, pain. And one of those ways is through sympathy, or just through verbalizing things and talking it out. So in that example, when someone yells at us, or maybe they bought and something went wrong with the system and their download link didn't work, and they emailed us and they yelled at us, well, when we go and we tell someone else what happens, then we feel better, right? That's our seeking of that pleasure. So if that's your response, if that's your defense mechanism, if that works for you, then that's fine. But just like everything else, it's very easy to overdo it. It's very easy, if you get yelled at all day long, to either disassociate yourself from it and just realize, well, that's just the cost of doing business. We have the very low percentage of refund rates, and we kind of need to have. Just the fact that we have this many people talking to us means that we're making this huge number of sales. Just like if people are complaining about taxes, well, you're complaining about paying so many taxes. Well, you're paying that many taxes because you make even more money coming in every single year. So it's really important to use a cliche, have a positive attitude and find the good in anything, because if you don't, if you just kind of stay in a kind of a mediocre life, if you have this victim mentality, if you enjoy getting beat down, then you're not going to go anywhere, and then you'll go stagnant, and then that will lead to your life just getting worse and worse. And we don't want that. We want you to be a little more, even this month, be 10% more self-aware of what it is you're doing and why it is you're doing it. And this is why people, become drug addicts, smoke cigarettes, drink alcohol, exercise, even things like that, is just to kind of get out of whatever state that they're in right now. So I know that I'm like this all the time. If I am having a bad day, it's really good just to go out and go for a walk, go for a run, go to the gym. I used to swim too, just to kind of go in with one kind of mindset and come back out of it. Anytime you go to a movie, because you're just sitting there for 2 hours and you're given through all this experience, by the time the movie's over, you're a completely different person. Things you were thinking about before are changed, and so that's really important, just to kind of mix things up, change your state break out of these cycles. And this is why, like if I'm writing, I might have, one drink of alcohol. I might have some caffeine just to kind of change things up, change my state. But just like everything else, it can be a tool or it can be something that messes you up. And so when we're dealing with these things called time management, I first, I guess, heard about this in college because, I don't know, at least for me, throughout high school and college, sometimes I would pull what are called all-nighters, right? Staying up all night, getting things done. Sometimes I would sleep late or stay up late or wake up early and just experiment with all these different ways of sleeping and waking up. And I heard about, and I used to go through this site called Everything 2. And I think it's still around, but it's basically like Wikipedia before there was a Wikipedia. And I found this thing where it's talking about polyphasic sleep. It's also called circadian rhythms, where basically you retrain your brain, where as soon as you hit the pillow, you lay down, you instantly go to sleep, and you instantly go into REM sleep, which is what your body actually is sleeping for. And so instead of taking the full 8 hours a night to sleep, you just sleep in short 15-minute increments, I think every 4 hours. So that becomes 6 different 15-minute naps per day. So you sleep 2 hours every day and you awake the rest of the time. It sounds good, but the only problem is that this process, I lasted about 20 days on this, and I couldn't even drive because I was always so exhausted. I was always groggy. I was always drifting off to sleep. And so apparently, it takes a month or longer to retrain yourself, but even when these people who have retrained themselves, well, they're at a reduced level of productivity. So now they have 22 waking hours, but they're kind of, not always in it. Language skills and language centers are a little bit inhibited. Math centers are increasing your brain, but this is one of these things, example of this thing called life hacking. And there are lots of blogs and sites on life hacking. You can Google these, and they will give you all these top 10 lists, right? They'll give you all these ways of being productive. They'll tell you things like, well, here's an idea is, for the next 7 days, never eat alone. For the next 7 days, just wear the same 5 pieces of clothing and just cycle through those. And that way you'll save 30 seconds every day so that you won't have to, put any time or thought into what you're going to wear that day. Or they might say things like, here's a blog post on 10 keyboard shortcuts. And so the idea here is that there are all different ways to save time that add up over time. And I actually have a book on Amazon called 100 Time Savers. And if you want some of these productivity hacks, you can go get them at 100. That's the number 1, number 0, number 0, TIMESAVERS.com. That's 100timesavers.com. And so that'll give you just a list of, little things you can do throughout the day to basically save yourself a bunch of time. And that'll give you a little bit of a help. But how do we get you to get the most out of those days and to keep them up? Because, little tips and things will give you, 20% of a boost. But let's focus on what really matters, 80%. And so if you've heard of this guy, Tim Ferriss, he wrote the 4 Work Week, for Body, for Chef. I discovered this guy years ago, and I always just think about, I don't read that much. I probably read like a book or 2 a month. Sometimes I listen on audiobooks, but I always think back to years ago when what books have just stuck in my brain. And let me just give you a couple of names. Tim Ferriss is one of them. 4 Work Week. And the big thing about him is he talked about this thing called the 80-20 rule, which means that 80% of what you do only gives you 20% of the result, and 20% of what you do gives you 80% of the result. Now, I tell you that, and you could do one of 2 things. You could write that down and say, oh, that's a cool little saying, but what it really means is that out of all the things you do in your day, only a small number of things actually matter. And a really good example of this is, well, if you actually, and I'm not telling you to do it because, I don't know, I think it'd be a waste of time. I'll just tell you what happens. When you sit at your computer, if you categorized, you somehow kept a journal of what it is you did at your computer, you would see this 80-20 rule in play, because we see your computer and maybe you spend a certain amount of time waiting for your computer to start up. You spend a certain amount of time checking email, checking Facebook, checking YouTube. A text comes up in your phone. So a huge chunk of your time can be saved if you just treat your computer as a hot seat, as like just a workstation, a productivity machine where you have a handful of things to do, and then that's it. Okay? Because you could spend 8 hours of your day and even of your work session at your computer just wasting time. And this is why today we're talking about the entrepreneur mindset, because what's the alternative to that? Well, it's the employee mindset, right? Someone who has a day job, and you've probably been there. I know that I've been there. And when I got paid hourly, that's how it started, and then it turned into like a yearly salary, is it didn't matter how much I really got accomplished. I mean, sure, I have, projects, deadlines, but it didn't matter how much I got accomplished. I still got paid the same amount of money. So it was in my best interest to, I don't want to say drag my feet, but I definitely was not at my peak performance because there was no reward, there was no pleasure for doing things faster, and there was no pain for doing things slower to a point. So I was in that gray area that you've probably been in if you're a day job employee where you're comfortably numb and not really getting things done. And so when you create your own business, whether that's on the side or you're full-time or you're a partner in a business or what the situation is, you can no longer act like an employee. Because if you do, then you'll just be running up the clock and you'll ultimately be frustrated. It might not happen today or tomorrow, but you might look back years from now and say, well, shoot, if only I had done just 4 things a day. And those 4 things were the most important things that I need to be doing and the most profitable activities. And I just shut out everything else. I removed that other 80%, then I would be in such a better place. So here's what happened is after discovering the 4-hour work week years ago, I looked into, which time management systems are the best to use out there? And I found, there's like Getting Things Done, and there's a bunch of other different ones where like you have to keep a big long notebook, one where you have to use this piece of software, and of course they sell it to you, and different things like that. And a lot of them were just honestly too complicated. And what I ended up doing was coming up with a system called 4DT, because if I don't name it something, then you're not going to give value to it. It's 4DT, stands for 4 daily tasks. And so bringing this back around to Tim Ferriss, the 80-20 rule, would you say that if you put in, I really don't like to use the term work because work brings up bad things in my mind, but for once again, going back to that 8-hour session, all right, the stereotypical 8-hour workday, is it possible that you do 20 different tasks when it comes to checking your email? Maybe you check your email 5 times a day. Maybe you check social media a couple of times a day, and you do everything else. There are probably 20 things you do in a given day. And I don't want to tell you to prioritize or cross out the ones that don't work, but out of those 20, would you say that if you had to do 4 things, that 4 of them just kind of rise to the top, right? So in my case, connecting with joint venture partners, publishing content like blog posts or sending out emails, setting up paid ads, running live webinars, those are all, I guess, like money tasks, right? Those are all things that I know make me the most money. But in other things, like posting on Twitter, maybe submitting to article directories, those are things where I'm probably not going to do them because that's the 80% that is wasteful. So that's really helpful. And so this system that I have called 4DT, here's how it works, is right now today, he lists out what are the 4 most important things. But I think a lot of people mess up as far as the size of these things because they'll either go too big or too small. And they'll say, okay, well, one of my tasks that I need to do is to decide on a title of my blog post. Well, how long will that take you? 2 minutes? That's too small of a task. We're looking for 3 tasks that are 45 minutes long each. All right, so 45 focused minutes with no other distractions going on for us. So in that case, one of those tasks might be to record a 45-minute video on some kind of subject. One of those tasks might be to create a PowerPoint presentation for a video you might shoot tomorrow. One of those tasks might be to write the entire blog post, or just write like a short version of the first draft and then put out what it is you have. So you have 3 tasks that are 45 minutes, but wait, you ask, 4 daily tasks. What's the 4th task? The 4th task is one task of about 10 minutes. So that way, on every typical day, that you have one thing that's really easy to do, one thing to check off your list, and then 3 things. I don't want to say they're hard, but they're 3 substantial tasks, and that's it. We don't have to make it any more complicated than that. And sure, in your previous thing, you might have thought, well, I have to do all these little tiny things. Well, now you'll end up grouping them together, and this will also keep you from shifting your gears and shifting focus to multiple projects, because multitasking does not work. What does work is monotasking focus. So you have these 4 tasks that you do every single day. Now the next piece of a component to this is that at first it'll be difficult for you to actually put an end cap on things. It's very difficult to say, okay, this blog post is done, that's it. So you use this counter timer that I told you, this thing called Cool Timer, and I think there's some equivalent for the Macintosh, I'm not sure, but I use this timer, and so when I have a task that I know will take me 45 minutes, I set up this timer, and once it's done, it has to be done. Because another thing from Tim Ferriss is this thing called the Pareto Principle. Or is it the Pareto Principle or Parkinson's Law? I always get them confused, but it pretty much means that if you give yourself 8 hours to write a blog post, that blog post will take you all 8 hours to write. If you give yourself only 45 minutes, well then, you'll get it done in 45 minutes. So this timer thing, at first, you'll hate yourself, you'll have to retrain your brain, but if you begin completing things before the timers run out, then you'll kind of figure out this new system. Now, once you get to that point, the next step is, well, it might seem a little scary, but it's not, an accountability partner, which means that you start sharing your 4 daily task list with someone, anyone. If it's a business partner, great, but if it's some random friends, they don't need to know everything you're doing. Just show them the list. And what I like to do is I like to abbreviate project names and video names and things like that so that they don't even have to know what it's about. But they can say at the end of that day, did you record a video on this? Did you write the blog post on that? The answer is yes, no, or yes, no. Now, on a good day, you'll get all these 4 things done. Then you're done for the day. Then you get off the computer and you don't have to worry about anything else. On some days, yeah, you might only get 2 or 3 things done. And so what that means is, let's say that you got 3 of the tasks done. Task number 4, whatever reason, maybe you ran out of time, you just couldn't get to it. Maybe you had other commitments, who knows what. But then tomorrow, you have 2 things of what you can do, to quote a rapper. You can use that task as one of your 4 tasks for tomorrow, or maybe it just wasn't important. Maybe it was something like update the bio on my blog, or do some keyword research. Wasn't important, fine, I'm not going to do it the next day. Or maybe it was something that really important, like I've got to make that phone call, I've got to make that video. Okay, that'll be the very first thing I do on that next day. But what's really cool about this is, if you end up carrying over a task 2, 3, 4 days, then you're either going to shit or get off the pot, right? You're either going to do it, or you're going to decide it's not important at all. So you have your timer, you have your accountability partner, and now you might think, well, if you're used to using like a to-do list, like this thing of hundreds of bullet points, and we've all been there, and we all know that person, we all know that guy in our life who has such a long to-do list, he doesn't get anything done, he's really smart, but just can't get motivated, can't get things completed, has a to-do list of to-do lists, it's so organized and categorized, they even have a whiteboard on the wall to list it all, even though the whiteboard never changed it, it's so dang depressing. So to-do lists don't work. But the one thing that to-do lists do help you for is for some long-term, I guess, planning, right? It does help to know, what will I be doing in a month from now if I have some kind of a product launch or a meeting or an interview or a video that needs to be done in a week? How do I handle that? Well, for that, use a calendar. So not a to-do list, but a calendar. And I like to use Google Calendar. If you have what's called a Gmail account, that actually is great for email, because it means that you don't have to have your computer on or open. You can just go and take your browser to gmail.com and check your email when it's convenient for you. And preferably, that is not one of your 4 daily tasks. Maybe it's just a reward for finishing your task. It's not the first thing you do in the morning, but you use that Gmail account. And so when you log into your Gmail account, there's a tab that says Calendar. And you can just schedule things on that calendar. And the reason I use this above any other calendaring system is because if you do a YouTube search for how to sync Google Calendar onto your phone, you can do that. So you can schedule something on the web on Google Calendar. It shows up on your phone, on your iPad. You can share your calendar with other Google Calendar users. So if you have a business partner, family members, spouse, children, you can share that with other people so that it all stays organized and it's safely scheduled into next week. So you can just focus on this week. Based on this week, what are my 4 tasks for today, and then move forward from there. It seems really simple, and I know that for some of you, because it's so simple, you might not be in that right mindset to accept it, but I'm just telling you, this is how to stay productive. The 4 daily task system. You have 3 45-minute tasks and 1 10-minute task, and you just list them out. I actually list them in a private blog of mine. I share it with my accountability partner. I run a countdown timer to complete each task, and then I schedule things in the future like meetings and things like that into my Google Calendar, and then I don't have to think that far ahead in the future because the calendar does it for me. And this kind of solves a lot of problems because since I only have a certain amount of time to get things completed, I have my phone over in the other room. I have email and other distractions safely away because I'm laser focused right now. That important phone call can wait half an hour or an hour because I need to finish this video. I need to make this article. I need to make a blog post. And by getting yourself in the right mindset, this will really help you keep the momentum because when you see all these things you get accomplished, and if you set things up right, when you see the money that you make from your affiliate promotions, from selling your products, from running your ads, then this will be motivation to keep going. And if you're not making money, then, well, chances are it's because you haven't completed things. But if you have completed things, if you put out, let's say, a product, or if you're advertising and your traffic's not converting, or you're not getting any traffic, then you just need to adjust and move forward to that next logical step. But so much of this is just having a good attitude about things. But the trick, I think, is not having too good of an attitude, because we all know those people who are so obsessed and so enthralled and they're so well read with all this self-help trickery that they have in fact tricked and hypnotized themselves. What does that mean? It means that they're in denial, overly optimistic, believing that, it'll all just work out. I've put good thoughts out there. I'm not really, adding any value to the marketplace. I'm not building a list. I don't know what my marketplace needs. I'm not giving them products and services and solutions that help and solve the problems, but doggone it, I'm so dang happy. And so there's definitely a balance in there, okay? Like, you don't want to be a total grump, ruining everyone else's day, but you also don't want to have your head in the clouds. And what's funny is, Think and Grow Rich, I've mentioned, is an old book, but it's this book where this guy looked into, all these wealthy millionaires. What do they all have in common? And there are several different traits that they all have in common. Things like they're all in a mastermind. They use the power of imagination, to help them out. They keep trying different things until they succeed. Once things do succeed, they keep them going and they systematize it. And so many of like the self-help, or even if you get into like religion or philosophy, they all kind of copy each other. Why? Because there's only a certain number of things that actually work, and there's different ways of saying them. And so you look into a couple of these people like Tim Ferriss, read Think and Grow Rich, even look into like this guy Tony Robbins. I know a lot of people are turned off by this guy Tony Robbins because everyone thinks back to, back in the 80s when infomercials were invented. He was like this cheesy guy. He says, I'm going to change your life and just listen to these audio tapes and you'll make $10 million just by thinking. And if you actually listen to some of this guy's stuff, it actually makes sense, and he's just made things really simple. And the number one thing that I hear from this guy Tony Robbins is that human beings are driven by what he calls six human needs, and they are certainty, uncertainty, variety, connection, significance, growth, and contribution, just off the top of my head. So if you think about that, if you think about your reason why, then you realize that, as someone who is trying to build their own business, become an entrepreneur, money is important. But if you're the kind of person who says, well, I don't really care about money, or you care about money quite a bit, well, what you really care about is a feeling. And so I know a lot of people, they have a message, right? And they want to share it out with the world. They want everyone to love them. They want to become famous. They want to become significant. I know even more people who they want money, but they want money to provide for their family and have stability, have that certainty, have the peace of mind, and not have to worry about where is the next paycheck, the next bill is going to come from. And I think that's really what motivated me quite a bit as far as breaking out of that rat race. No longer being an employee. It was good to have that consistent, steady paycheck, but there was no movement for growth in there. And unfortunately, it took me years to stumble upon some of this different self-help and productivity training, like Tim Ferriss, Tony Robbins, Think and Grow Rich. And you know what? For so many years, I held myself back. I self-sabotaged without even really realizing it. I felt bad when I made a lot of money, and I would in fact slow myself down when money came in just because I was not self-aware, and I didn't realize that I really needed to get to those goals. I wanted a nice car, wanted a nice house, wanted a nice relationship, wanted a nice family, wanted the peace of mind to not have to worry about money. And so once I had that set up, now that was the pleasure that I was moving towards. And the pain was, well, just my present situation. So I didn't fall into that trap of hating everything I was, but I knew that, well, I'm just uncomfortable enough to move forward and have a better life. And I hope that that is the direction that you are heading towards as well. And so I want to tell you about my program called Time Management on Crack.com. And it's kind of a lot like this call where we blend some of like the inner game stuff with the outer game, right? The mindset, the productivity with what you actually have to do to get things done online, to set up a real online business, to get real traffic, to produce real content, to get conversions, to make sales. So this course, Time Management on Crack.com, basically walks you through the 5 central pieces critical to your success. Online marketing, so how to make money online from freelancing, making products, affiliate marketing, site building. Time management to stay productive every single day and wake up every morning excited about what you're doing. Things like content creation, article writing, videos, products and traffic, webinars, and more. That's at timemanagementoncrack.com. So check it out and start using those repeatable systems. Now that you've solved your mindset issues, your hang-ups, you are now using productivity tools so that you get everything done in a fraction of the time, and now you can figure out what's working, what's not, and then systematize what does work, avoid what doesn't, and basically get to where you want to go very, very quickly and have fun doing it. So that's all for me. I'm Robert Plank from Time Management on Crack.com. Join us next time for Robert Plank Show, Episode 9. How to set up your own podcast and get your radio show published on iTunes. I'm excited. I hope that you are too. Head on over to robertplankshow.com and click the like button to like us on Facebook and get your name mentioned by me on air, just like Dennis Cochran, Sheridan Ripley, Kathleen Guthrie, Jong Min Jung, Isabel Coate, Chris Downs, Jason Martin, Noah Leff, Zach Crawford, Azwari Zubir, Natalie Paley, Susan Gustafson, Phil Wayman, Jim Bullock, Mustafa Patel, Muhammad Anas PM, Judy Babin, Harry Hodgson, and Gail Moslock. Talk to you later, and I can't wait to connect with you very, very soon.